In a small crowded neighborhood on the edge of the city lived a boy named Darius Cole. The streets around his home were rough, filled with the sounds of traffic, loud voices, and sometimes sirens. Many people in this neighborhood struggled with problems like poverty, crime, and broken families. It was the kind of place where most kids grew up too fast, learning how to protect themselves first and dream later. But Darius was different from most kids around him. Even though he looked like an ordinary boy from the outside, inside his mind was a place full of ideas, knowledge, and dreams that were much bigger than his neighborhood. Darius lived with his mother, Angela, who worked very hard. She had two jobs, one during the day at a local diner and another cleaning offices at night. She always told Darius that education was his way out of their difficult life. Angela believed in her son's potential even when others didn't. She often reminded him, "Son, the world will judge you by your skin, your place, but never let it judge your mind. You are smart, and you can do great things." These words stayed with Darius and became his shield against the harsh reality around him. At school, Darius wasn't like the other kids. He wasn't the best athlete, nor the most popular. Many teachers didn't pay much attention to him. Some even thought he was quiet and kept to himself because he didn't fit the usual mold. But Darius had a secret. He was reading and learning things way beyond his grade level. He loved books about history, science, and most of all, the law. His curiosity about the legal system started when he was just 10 years old. One day, he found an old copy of the United States Constitution in the library and was fascinated by it. He started reading about how laws are made, how judges decide cases, and how the justice system worked. He was fascinated by the idea that words on paper could protect people's rights, or sometimes be used to take those rights away. Darius knew that many people in his neighborhood didn't have anyone to stand up for them when things went wrong. Sometimes he heard stories from his friends about unfair treatment by police or the court system. These stories made him want to learn more so he could someday help people like himself and his friends. Because the neighborhood didn't have many resources, Darius often spent hours in the small local library after school. The library was old and didn't have many books, but Darius made the most of it. He also used the computer there to search for legal documents and cases. Even though many other kids spent time on video games or social media, Darius was reading court decisions, legal terms, and even watching videos about famous trials. His IQ was 148, which means he was smarter than most adults, but he never bragged about it. He was quiet, focused, and always hungry for knowledge. One day, when he was 14, something happened that would change his life forever. A bicycle went missing from a neighbor's porch. The bike wasn't very expensive, but it was important to the family. Somehow Darius was accused of stealing it. He hadn't done anything wrong, but because of where he lived and how he looked, people immediately assumed he was guilty. The police arrested him and took him to juvenile court. Darius was scared at first. He had never been to a courtroom before. He didn't have a lawyer, and his mother was worried but didn't have money to hire one. Most kids in his situation would have just stayed silent, hoping things would get better on their own. But Darius was not like most kids. He knew the law. He had spent years reading about rights and rules. He decided he would speak for himself. When he walked into the courtroom, he saw the judge, the prosecutor, and a room full of people who were already convinced he was guilty. The judge, a man named Raymond Keller, was a serious man with years of experience. Judge Keller had seen many young kids come through his courtroom, and most of them were troublemakers or confused boys who didn't understand what was happening. When Darius stood up and said he wanted to defend himself, Judge Keller thought it was strange, but allowed it. The judge started asking questions. He wanted to see if this boy really knew anything about law, or if he was just wasting everyone's time. So Judge Keller decided to play a game. He asked Darius a series of questions that were like a game of truth or lie. The judge would say something about the law or the case, and Darius had to say if it was true or false. It was almost like a test. The judge thought it would be easy to catch the boy in a mistake. But Darius surprised everyone. He answered each question carefully, explaining not just if it was true or false, but why. He talked about the right to a fair trial, the importance of evidence, and how the police must prove beyond a reasonable doubt that someone is guilty. The judge started to pay close attention. He had never met a child who spoke about the law so clearly and confidently. The prosecutor tried to make Darius look foolish by asking tricky questions, but Darius stayed calm. He pointed out mistakes in the police report and explained why the evidence against him was weak. For example, the bike was found near his house, but there was no proof he had taken it. Darius argued that the police had not followed the proper procedures when they arrested him. Every time the prosecutor tried to corner him, Darius answered with facts and logic. The people in the courtroom began to whisper among themselves. Some were shocked. Others looked impressed. The judge's expression changed from boredom to curiosity. He realized that Darius was not just a scared kid. He was a legal genius in disguise. While this was happening, Darius thought about more than just his own case. He knew that many kids like him would never get this chance. The system was designed to judge people quickly, especially if they came from poor neighborhoods or were different from the usual. But Darius had a plan. He wanted to prove that intelligence and knowledge were not limited by age, skin color, or background. Even though the courtroom was intimidating, Darius's mind worked like a machine. He remembered everything he had read about the Constitution, about rights, and about justice. He wanted to show everyone that he deserved to be heard and treated fairly. The judge, who had seen thousands of cases before, found himself learning something new that day. He saw that Darius's ideas were not just clever words, but powerful truths. This boy, who many would have ignored, was challenging the whole system with his knowledge. Outside the courtroom, Darius's mother waited nervously. She didn't fully understand all the legal language, but she could see that her son was standing tall and speaking with confidence. She felt proud and hopeful for the first time in a long while. This day was just the beginning. Darius's life was about to change, in ways he never imagined. What started as a simple accusation of stealing a bike became a story of courage, intelligence, and breaking stereotypes. People in the neighborhood started talking about the boy who stood up to a judge. They whispered that maybe, just maybe, Darius was destined for something greater. And deep down, Darius believed it too. The day Darius stepped into the courtroom, things were already stacked against him. The small courtroom smelled of old wood and polished leather, and the air was thick with seriousness. This was a place where adults made big decisions about people's lives. But for Darius, a 14-year-old boy from a tough neighborhood, it felt like walking into a different world. Judge Raymond Keller sat behind a large desk, his face stern and his eyes sharp. He was used to seeing young kids come through his court for all sorts of reasons: theft, fighting, running away from home. Most times, he thought, these kids didn't understand the seriousness of what was happening. They either cried, stayed quiet, or tried to lie their way out. So when Darius told the court he wanted to speak for himself, Keller thought it was unusual and maybe even a little foolish. How could a kid defend himself in a court full of adults, lawyers, and police officers? The prosecutor was ready to put the case to rest quickly. It seemed simple. A bike was missing, and Darius was arrested nearby. In the eyes of many in the courtroom, the facts pointed to one conclusion: the boy was guilty. But what none of them knew yet was that Darius was not just any boy. He was a boy who understood the law better than most adults. When the judge began the session, he looked at Darius carefully. "You want to defend yourself?" he asked with a hint of surprise. Darius nodded quietly but firmly. "Yes, Your Honor." The judge decided to test him first. He asked, "Do you understand what it means to defend yourself in court?" Darius replied, "Yes, Your Honor. It means I will speak on my own behalf and answer questions about the case." The judge raised an eyebrow but decided to continue. He started asking questions, simple ones about the case and the law, but he framed them like a game of truth or lie. It was a way to check if Darius really knew what he was talking about or if he was bluffing. "Is it true," the judge asked, "that if someone is arrested, the police do not have to prove anything until the trial?" Darius shook his head. "That is not true, Your Honor. The police must have reasonable evidence before arresting someone. Otherwise, it is considered unlawful detention." The judge blinked. That was an impressive answer for a kid. "Okay," the judge said. "If someone is accused of theft, is it the person's responsibility to prove they did not do it?" "False," Darius answered confidently. "The law says the prosecution must prove the accused is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. The accused does not have to prove innocence." The courtroom was silent. No one expected this kind of knowledge. From a teenager. Even the prosecutor paused, looking surprised. The judge smiled slightly but tried to keep control. "What about evidence? Does a single witness statement always prove guilt?" Darius took a breath. "No, Your Honor. The evidence must be reliable and consistent. If there are contradictions, the witness's statement can be questioned." The judge was impressed but didn't want to show it too openly. He continued, "What is the role of a defense lawyer?" Darius replied, "To protect the accused's rights, question the prosecution's evidence, and ensure a fair trial." This was exactly what Darius planned to do for himself. The prosecutor tried to make Darius nervous by asking rapid questions and using legal jargon. He asked if Darius understood probable cause or burden of proof. But Darius answered every question with calm and clarity. He explained complex legal ideas in simple language. He even mentioned a famous court case, Miranda versus Arizona, about a person's right to remain silent. Everyone in the courtroom began paying attention. The judge leaned forward in his chair. The prosecutor looked worried. The officers and spectators whispered quietly. Darius wasn't just defending himself. He was teaching everyone a lesson about fairness and justice. He explained that the police report against him was full of mistakes. The officer who arrested him had said he saw Darius near the bike, but there was no proof Darius took it. There were no fingerprints or witnesses who saw him steal it. The only reason for arresting him was suspicion. Darius pointed out that suspicion was not enough for an arrest. The law required proof, not guesses. He said that the police should have investigated more before accusing him. The judge nodded slowly. He began to ask Darius questions about the specific steps the police should have taken. Darius answered carefully, showing his knowledge of legal procedures. At one point, Darius asked the judge if he could cross-examine the arresting officer. The judge agreed, curious to see what the boy would do. The officer came forward, looking confident. The prosecutor expected the officer to easily confirm the story. But Darius asked questions that made the officer uncomfortable. He asked about the exact time of the arrest, where the bike was found, and whether the officer followed proper arrest procedures. Under Darius's questioning, the officer's story began to crack. He admitted he did not see the boy actually take the bike, only that he was near it. The officer also said he didn't check the area properly before making the arrest. These admissions showed the arrest was rushed and possibly unfair. The judge looked thoughtful. The courtroom was quiet, everyone watching closely. Darius stayed calm throughout. He knew the power of facts and logic. He didn't shout or get angry. Instead, he used his knowledge to explain why he deserved a fair chance. The prosecutor tried to object several times but was overruled. The judge allowed Darius to continue. Outside the courtroom, reporters began arriving. Word spread quickly about the boy who was defending himself with legal knowledge far beyond his years. Some thought it was a media stunt. Others were amazed. The courtroom was filled with a mix of curiosity, skepticism, and admiration. People began to see Darius as more than just a kid from a rough neighborhood. He was someone who could challenge the system Judge Keller, who had seen hundreds of cases, realized that he had underestimated Darius. This wasn't just a child who wanted to talk. It was a young mind that understood justice deeply. Darius knew this was his chance to show the world that intelligence and hard work could break barriers. He remembered the nights in the library, the hours spent reading dusty law books, and the quiet encouragement from his mother. Even though he was nervous, he stood tall. He wasn't just fighting for himself, but for every kid who had ever been judged unfairly because of where they came from or what they looked like. The hearing lasted for hours. Darius patiently answered every question, corrected mistakes, and pointed out problems in the evidence. He used simple language that even people outside the courtroom could understand. By the end of the day, the judge announced that the case needed further review. He thanked Darius for his clear and respectful arguments. For the first time, Darius felt hope. He wasn't just a suspect. He was a person with a voice. The courtroom slowly emptied, but the story did not end there. People outside talked about the boy who had turned a courtroom game into a real fight for justice. His calm intelligence was inspiring. Judge Keller began to rethink his own beliefs. He wondered how many other kids like Darius had been silenced by the system. The idea of justice suddenly felt more important and more complicated than ever before. Darius left the courtroom that day knowing he had started something new, a journey that would change not only his life, but the lives of many others. After that intense day in court, things began to change. The mood inside the courtroom, which had been full of judgment and doubt, shifted towards something different: curiosity and respect. Judge Keller, who had started out skeptical about the boy standing before him, was now watching with genuine interest. Darius, the young boy from a tough neighborhood, was proving that he was far from ordinary. He was calm, confident, and sharp, more like a seasoned lawyer than a teenager. The courtroom was quiet as Darius prepared to take the next step, cross-examining the arresting officer. This was a crucial moment because how well Darius handled this would decide how seriously everyone would take him. The prosecutor was tense, knowing that the boy's legal knowledge could expose weak points in the case. The judge watched closely, ready to step in if things went off track, but also curious to see if Darius could handle this challenge. The officer took the stand, looking confident at first. He was used to being in court and probably assumed that questioning from a 14-year-old wouldn't be difficult. But he soon realized that Darius was no ordinary kid. Darius began asking questions clearly and politely, but each question was designed to uncover the truth. "Officer," Darius said, "can you tell us exactly what you saw the day you arrested me?" The officer hesitated for a moment but then described the scene. He said he saw Darius near the bike that was reported stolen. But when Darius asked if he saw him actually take the bike, the officer admitted, "No, I did not see that." This admission was important. Darius's sharp mind noticed immediately. He continued, "So you arrested me based on being near the bike, not because you saw me steal it?" "Yes," the officer replied. Darius then asked about the process. "Did you search the area carefully for any other suspects?" The officer shrugged. "I did a quick search but didn't find anyone else." Darius pointed out that this was not a thorough search. He explained that law enforcement should try to find the actual suspect and not just arrest the nearest person. The judge nodded slightly, listening carefully. The questioning continued. Darius asked if the officer checked for fingerprints on the bike or if there were any witnesses who saw the theft. The officer admitted there was no fingerprint evidence and no witnesses. This was another weak point in the case. Darius asked, "Without fingerprints or witnesses, how can you be sure I am guilty?" The officer had no answer. The judge began to see that the case was built on shaky ground. Darius kept his tone respectful, but he was firm. He showed everyone that the police report was full of assumptions, not facts. The prosecutor tried to interrupt, but the judge allowed Darius to finish. The courtroom was captivated. People could sense the truth coming out. The officer's confident story was crumbling under Darius's questioning. After the officer left, "The stand," the judge paused. He looked at Darius and said, "You have done well to point out the weaknesses in the case." The judge's words meant a lot. It was rare for someone, especially a child, to speak so clearly and command respect in his courtroom. Outside the courtroom, the news was spreading fast. Reporters had heard about the boy who was taking on the legal system by himself. Some came to watch the trial, others called their editors to share the story. Darius became a local sensation. People in his neighborhood began to talk about him differently. He was no longer just the quiet kid from the block. He was the boy who stood up to a judge and made adults listen. His mother was proud, but also worried. The attention was new and overwhelming. The judge, who had never experienced something like this before, started to reflect deeply. He thought about the many cases he had presided over, how many times he had seen kids like Darius, but never realized their potential. He began to question his own assumptions and the biases built into the justice system. The hearing continued, with Darius making calm, logical arguments. He cited specific legal rules and even mentioned past court decisions that supported his case. He spoke about the importance of reasonable doubt and how the law protects innocent people from being punished without strong proof. At one point, the judge asked Darius how he had learned so much about the law. Darius smiled quietly and said, "I read a lot, Your Honor. I want to understand the system so I can help people who don't have a voice." This simple answer surprised many. It showed that Darius's knowledge wasn't just for winning a case. It was for a higher purpose. The prosecution realized they had to be more careful. The case was no longer simple. Darius had turned the courtroom into a place of real debate and learning. By the end of the day, Judge Keller made a decision. The case would be dismissed because there was not enough evidence to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Some people smiled with relief. Others looked stunned. Darius felt a huge wave of emotions: relief, joy, and pride. He had done what many thought impossible. He had defended himself and won. The media attention grew. Newspapers called him a legal prodigy and teen genius. News channels wanted interviews. Lawyers from around the city reached out with offers to mentor him. Despite the excitement, Darius stayed humble. He knew this was only the beginning. His fight was not just about one case. It was about showing the world that knowledge and justice should be available to everyone, no matter where they came from. Judge Keller decided to do something unexpected. After the hearing, he invited Darius to his chambers. There, he told the boy how impressed he was and offered to help him with legal studies. He said he wanted to be a mentor. This was a rare offer. Judges usually keep distance from defendants, especially minors. But Keller saw something special in Darius. Not just intelligence, but courage and determination. Darius accepted the offer gratefully. He knew this mentorship could open doors he never imagined. Back in his neighborhood, people looked at Darius with new respect. Parents told their children about him, hoping he would inspire others to dream bigger. However, with fame came new challenges. Some people doubted Darius's story. They said it was a lucky day, or that the media was exaggerating. Darius heard the whispers but didn't let them distract him. He focused on his studies and his dream of becoming a lawyer. He wanted to prove that his knowledge and success were real and deserved. At school, some classmates treated him differently. Some were jealous, others admired him. Darius tried to stay the same boy he had always been, humble and hardworking. His mother watched with mixed feelings. She was proud but worried about the pressure her son was facing. As weeks passed, Darius became more confident. He knew the courtroom had taught him lessons no classroom ever could. He understood that knowledge was power, but respect and fairness were just as important. Judge Keller continued to guide him, sending him books, sharing stories about the law and encouraging him to ask questions. Darius's story was no longer just about a stolen bike. It was about breaking barriers, fighting stereotypes, and showing that a boy from a poor neighborhood could be a legal genius. The courtroom battle was a turning point, a moment when a judge, a prosecutor, a police officer, and a whole community had to see Darius not as a suspect but as a smart, brave young person with a future. This moment gave hope to many who had been ignored or judged unfairly. It reminded everyone that true justice must always be fair and open to everyone. Darius's journey was just beginning. The boy who played truth or lie in court had won the respect of adults and the hearts of many. He was ready to take on bigger challenges ahead. After the courtroom drama had settled, Darius's life began to change in ways he had never imagined. The victory in court was more than just winning a case. It was a turning point. Suddenly, he wasn't just a boy from a rough neighborhood. He had become someone the community talked about with respect and hope. People who had once ignored or judged him started to see him differently. But Darius knew this new attention was both a gift and a challenge. The first thing that changed was the way the legal world viewed him. Judges, lawyers, and even law students began to notice the boy who had stood up for himself with such confidence and knowledge. Word spread fast, and Darius began receiving letters and messages from lawyers who wanted to help him. Some invited him to their offices, others sent books and resources to feed his hunger for learning. Judge Keller, who had seen many troubled youths, was now personally invested in Darius's future. He had never met a young person like him before, someone who not only understood the law but wanted to use it for good. Keller believed Darius had the potential to become a great lawyer someday, and he decided to help him as much as he could. The judge arranged for Darius to meet legal mentors, people who could teach him things school did not cover. These mentors were patient and encouraging. They explained complex ideas in simple terms and gave Darius exercises to practice. The boy soaked it all up like a sponge. He read legal textbooks, studied case laws, and learned how to write legal arguments. This was a world that fascinated him, and he felt at home. But with all this support came new pressures. The more people talked about Darius's abilities, the higher their expectations became. Some adults expected him to become a lawyer quickly or to fix all the problems in his community. Some even suggested he should leave school and focus only on law. But Darius wanted to balance his education and his passion for law. He knew that education was important, not just legal knowledge but general subjects too. At school, life was a mixed experience. Some classmates admired him, while others were jealous. Darius tried not to let the attention distract him, but it wasn't easy. Sometimes, people whispered behind his back or questioned if he really deserved the praise. The fame brought a kind of loneliness. He missed the days when he was just an ordinary kid, playing basketball or hanging out with friends. His family, especially his mother, was proud but worried. They had seen Darius struggle through difficult times. They knew the pressure of being in the spotlight could be heavy for a young boy. His mother encouraged him to stay grounded and to remember why he started learning about the law in the first place, to help others. Darius also faced challenges from the system. Some people in authority didn't like being questioned by a child, no matter how smart he was. Some lawyers treated him with skepticism, and a few officers still looked at him as if he were a troublemaker. Darius had to learn patience and resilience. He realized that fighting for justice was not just about knowledge, but also about handling people's attitudes. During this time, Darius got involved in community work. He began visiting local centers where kids like him faced problems with the law. He shared his story, encouraging them to know their rights and to stand up for themselves. His story became a symbol of hope, proof that even in tough circumstances, a person could rise above and fight back with knowledge. One day, a local newspaper decided to do a feature on Darius. They wanted to show how a boy from the neighborhood had changed his life through law. The article described his courtroom victory, his mentors, and his dreams for the future. The story inspired many readers. Letters and calls poured in, offering support, advice, and sometimes just kind words. However, not everyone was happy. Some people doubted Darius's abilities and intentions. A few local officials questioned if he really understood the law or if he was just a lucky kid who got one big break. Darius heard their doubts but chose not to respond with anger. Instead, he let his actions speak for themselves. He continued to study, volunteer, and prepare for the future. Judge Keller remained a steady source of support. He invited Darius to observe real court cases, where he could see how lawyers presented their arguments and how judges made decisions. These visits were like windows into the future Darius dreamed of. He saw how complex and sometimes unfair the legal system could be, but he also saw the power it had to bring justice. With this new exposure, Darius's understanding of justice deepened. He realized that the law was not just about winning cases, but about fairness, empathy, and protecting those who could not protect themselves. This insight made him even more determined to use his knowledge for good. At school, Darius started a small legal awareness club with the help of a teacher. The club's goal was to teach other students about their rights and the basics of law. It was a way to share what he had learned and to build a community of young people who could support each other. The club became popular, and soon they invited guest speakers, lawyers, police officers, and judges to talk to students. Darius also began preparing for the future in a practical way. He studied hard for exams, knowing that good grades would help him get scholarships and university admission. He learned to balance his schoolwork with his legal studies and community activities. It was not easy, but he was motivated by his dreams. His family continued to support him, attending his school events and helping him with his studies whenever they could. His mother often reminded him to stay humble and kind, no matter how successful he became. Meanwhile, Darius's story caught the attention of a local law school professor named Ms. Thompson. She reached out and offered to tutor him in advanced legal topics. She was impressed by his curiosity and dedication. Under her guidance, Darius learned about constitutional law, civil rights, and criminal procedure in more depth. Ms. Thompson encouraged him to think critically and to always question injustice. One day, Ms. Thompson invited Darius to participate in a moot court competition, a mock trial where students argued cases to practice their skills. Darius was excited but nervous. This was his first real test in a legal setting outside the courtroom where he had once stood alone. He spent weeks preparing. He studied the case materials, wrote arguments, and practiced his speaking skills. His mentors helped him improve his delivery and think on his feet. When the day of the competition arrived, Darius stood before a panel of judges and lawyers, just like a real lawyer. His performance was impressive. He argued his points clearly, responded well to questions, and showed deep understanding of the law. The judges praised his poise and knowledge. Although he didn't win the competition, Darius's participation was a victory itself. It showed he belonged in the world of law. After the competition, Darius felt more confident. He realized that every step forward required hard work and courage. He knew the journey would have challenges, but he was ready. Back in his neighborhood, Darius's success inspired younger kids. They saw him as proof that education and determination could change lives. Parents encouraged their children to learn about their rights and to believe in themselves. Darius also started speaking at community events and schools. He told his story honestly, the struggles, the victories, and the importance of knowing the law. He wanted everyone to understand that the law was not just for lawyers or judges. It belonged to everyone. Despite the progress, Darius never forgot the courtroom where it all began. The experience taught him the value of fairness and the courage it takes to stand up for truth. He dreamed of one day becoming a judge himself, someone who would listen carefully and treat every person with respect. Judge Keller continued to watch Darius's growth with pride. He often said that Darius reminded him why the justice system should always give young people a chance to be heard. The judge and the boy formed a bond, a relationship built on mutual respect and hope. As months passed, Darius faced new challenges but also new opportunities. He applied for scholarships and internships, eager to gain more experience. He was determined to keep learning and to never give up on his dream. Through it all, Darius remained humble. He knew that knowledge was a powerful tool, but that kindness and perseverance were just as important. His story was no longer just about a boy who won a case. It was about a young person who dared to dream, who used his mind and heart to change his world. He became a symbol of hope, a reminder that anyone, no matter where they come from, can rise and make a difference. The courtroom game of truth or lie had started it all, but Darius's journey was far from over. It was only the beginning of a lifelong fight for justice, fairness, and equality. As Darius's journey continued, he faced many new experiences and challenges. Life after his courtroom victory was not easy, but it was full of lessons and growth. The boy who had once been underestimated and misunderstood had now become a symbol of hope for his neighborhood, a role model for kids like him, and an inspiration to many adults as well. One of the biggest changes for Darius was the responsibility that came with his new reputation. Suddenly, people expected him to speak for others, to stand up against injustice, and to be a leader. At first, this was overwhelming. Darius was still young, still learning about the world and himself, but over time he understood that, with knowledge and talent came the duty to help others. Darius worked hard to keep that balance between his dreams and his responsibilities. He continued his schoolwork with dedication, knowing that education was the foundation for everything he wanted to achieve. His teachers noticed his determination and often praised him for his focus and maturity. Outside the classroom, Darius became more involved in community programs. He spoke at youth centers, encouraged kids to believe in themselves, and taught them about their rights. His story helped many young people see that their background or mistakes didn't have to define their future. They could change their lives through learning and courage. Darius also started to build connections with local organizations working for justice and equality. He volunteered at legal aid clinics, where lawyers helped poor people who couldn't afford representation. Watching these lawyers fight for fairness inspired Darius even more. He dreamed of becoming one of them one day, using the law not just to win cases, but to make the world better. However, life was not without struggles. Sometimes Darius faced criticism and doubt. Some people said his success was just luck, or that he was being used as a token example by adults who wanted to look good. These voices could have discouraged him, but Darius learned to focus on his goals. He understood that change takes time, and not everyone would believe in him right away. His family continued to support him through everything. His mother, especially, was a constant source of strength and love. She reminded him that no matter how far he went, he should stay true to himself and his values. Her faith in him helped Darius stay grounded during difficult times. Judge Keller remained one of the most important mentors in Darius's life. The judge helped him navigate the legal world, giving advice and opening doors. He introduced Darius to judges, lawyers, and professors who could help him grow. The judge's belief in Darius's potential was a powerful motivator. Darius's hard work began to pay off. He earned a scholarship to a prestigious high school with a strong academic program. This new environment exposed him to students from different backgrounds and cultures. It was a chance to learn more, meet new friends, and prepare for college. In this new school, Darius continued to shine. He joined debate clubs, legal study groups, and community service organizations. His experiences gave him confidence and a deeper understanding of the law and society. He also learned to work with others, developing leadership skills that would be important for his future. Despite his busy schedule, Darius never forgot where he came from. He stayed connected with his old neighborhood, visiting often to check on friends and family. He helped organize events to raise awareness about legal rights and justice issues. Darius wanted to make sure that the children in his community knew they were not forgotten. One day, during a community meeting, Darius spoke passionately about the importance of education and justice. He told stories about his own struggles and successes. His words inspired many and reminded everyone that change begins with believing in yourself and never giving up. As college approached, Darius worked even harder. He studied for entrance exams, wrote essays about his goals, and applied to several universities. His ambition was clear: to become a lawyer, to fight for fairness, and to help those who needed it most. The day he received his acceptance letters was one of the happiest moments in his life. He had been accepted into a top law school, a dream come true. The letter was proof that hard work, determination, and courage could overcome even the toughest obstacles. In law school, Darius faced new challenges. The coursework was difficult, and the competition was fierce. But he was prepared. His years of self-study, mentorship, and community involvement gave him a strong foundation. He participated in moot courts, legal clinics, and internships, gaining practical experience. Throughout law school, Darius remained committed to his original mission: helping others. He worked with organizations providing free legal advice to underserved communities. He advocated for reforms that would make the justice system more accessible and fair. His reputation as a passionate and talented law student grew. Professors and peers respected his dedication and insight. He became a leader among his classmates, often organizing study groups and community outreach programs. After graduation, Darius passed the bar exam on his first try. This achievement was celebrated by everyone who had supported him over the years. Now a licensed attorney, Darius began working at a legal aid organization, helping clients who could not afford lawyers. His work was challenging but rewarding over time. Darius built a reputation as a fierce advocate for justice. He took cases involving wrongful convictions, discrimination, and unfair treatment by authorities. His ability to connect with clients and understand their struggles made him effective and respected. Darius never forgot the lessons from his youth. He treated every client with respect, listened carefully to their stories, and fought for their rights with passion and integrity. His own experiences gave him a unique perspective and empathy that few lawyers had. His work caught the attention of larger organizations and even national media. He was invited to speak at conferences, share his story on panels, and write articles about legal issues affecting marginalized communities. Through these platforms, Darius raised awareness and pushed for change. Despite his busy career, Darius remained humble and connected to his roots. He continued mentoring young people from his neighborhood, encouraging them to pursue education and know their rights. He believed that change came not just from courtrooms but from empowering others. Eventually, Darius's efforts were recognized by his community and beyond. He received awards for his work in justice and community service. But for him, the greatest reward was knowing he had made a difference in people's lives. His journey, from a boy wrongly accused to a courtroom challenger to a respected lawyer and community leader, showed the power of knowledge, courage, and determination. It proved that no matter where you come from, you can change your story and help change the world. Looking back, Darius realized that the game of truth or lie he played in court was just the beginning. It taught him to question assumptions, seek facts, and stand up for what is right. These lessons stayed with him through every step of his life. Darius dreamed of one day becoming a judge like Keller, someone who would ensure justice was fair and equal. He knew the road would be long and difficult, but he was ready. His story was not just about himself. It was about everyone who fights for a better future. As the years passed, Darius's impact continued to grow. He inspired others to believe in their potential and to use their voices for change. His life was a testament to the power of education and the importance of never giving up, no matter the odds. And so, the boy who once sat in a courtroom, playing truth or lie with a judge, had become a beacon of hope and justice for many. His journey showed that intelligence and courage could break down barriers and open doors. Most importantly, it showed that every person deserves to be heard and treated fairly.